Hellarena. Novel by Ayed Hindi. Part 6. Chapter 25. The Final Attack. Upon receiving the agreed signal from Princess Lion, Barkle, the head of the Malinese, ordered his officers to be prepared for the attack on the Galatians' army troops located on the city fringes. It seemed a plot of attempting suicide considering the mighty perilous impediment laying ahead. Nonetheless, knowing there is no way back for the princess and her soldiers, Barkle needed a device to help her in her mission. Though a fierce attack on the Galatians' army while they were unprepared would distract them and bring about chaos among the troops, that would pave the way for her to reach the castle securely, and she might finally bring an end for that miserable king. It is a chance to cut the loop that is hanging for a long, enduring, painful time upon them. Barkle went for an urgent meeting with his deputy Prince Kadorf and the military council of the Malinese army. They were gathered in haste and rushed to hold that crucial meeting. Barkle informed the gathering. I must enlighten your blessed gathering that I have received a signal from Princess Lion from across the Havsard Mountain. She crossed the Holy Valley, and she is now on her own without Ravdan help, and if she is succeeded, with blue plusive blessings, she will attack the castle to bring a conclusion to our abiding pain, torment, and sadness. As for us here, it is now or never. We have no other choice but to attack and break through the indelible bloody siege that was imposed upon us and our people, savagely by the Galatians' king. This is our last foreseeable true chance. Either we break in and defeat that monstrous army, or we die in pride and spare our souls the enduring torment. We can't sustain this slow path of imminent death and horror hanging over our beloved nation, and war was never our choice. Nevertheless, crucially, we have learned from the past experience that if we want to survive and win the war, we must be resilient, yet cruel, vicious, and merciless towards our enemies. With your permission, I order the army to be at the highest readiness and use all means available to initiate the planned attack tomorrow. We had put our plans in place before for such a moment, and we also have our brave soldiers ready to save their own lives for our nation. The only thing that would help us in this war, beside the bravery and the determination of our soldiers, is the surprise factor of the attack itself. They don't expect us ever to assault on their troops. They have left all the army frontiers wide open without defenses for their arrogance and pomposity, and because they were preparing to attack our fences and our city, they have moved all obstacles and paved their own ways to our gates. It is our chance, my brothers. Let us unite at this minute more than ever and be proud of our nation and our gallant soldiers. Barkle concluded his speech. Thereafter was a short but important, concise consultation between the gathering parties, and after the meeting was determined, everyone left the place and headed to their assigned post. We will follow the plan that we have put together, Prince Kadorf, and we won't change anything right now in a rush and haste. Are your troops ready? Barkle retorted. Yes, they are quite ready and will be at the very front. However, I want to ask you, if we manage to break through the enemy defenses, would you allow me and a few of my brave knights to catch up with the princess at the castle? I can't bear the idea she will fight alone with that monster. How will you get there, Prince Kadorf? The way to the castle is full of military forces, and they will definitely ask for reinforcements that will be using the same route. I have seen their forces accumulating along the way. I know the way around there, and we knew how to avoid their troops. We have done it before when we abounded our occupied city, but this time is not running away. This time is a march to victory with or blue plusive blessings. Very well, Prince Kadorf, you have my permission on the condition that you won't hurt our army efforts by your departure. Make it covert and surreptitious. Now let's wait in the barracks for the time being until I order the beginning of our final operation. The army brigades were gathering in a secret and clandestine manner to avoid being discovered by the enemy. Scrupulously, they started to assume their positions along the frontiers in readiness for the waited orders. After they had collected all the weapons in their arsenal, although they knew that they must use whatever means were left at their disposal and available for them, one thing was for sure. They would engage a very vicious enemy with absolutely no mercy on any living thing that came out of that surrounded city. Barkle met the commanders and junior officers and told them what information he had learned from Ravdan about their enemy, the Galatians' army, and what they could expect to face and what types of weapons, installations, and defenses they had in their possession. They set up together the targets and the tasks of every brigade. Barkle concluded the meeting by praying, and he encouraged all of his soldiers to perform their utmost in the upcoming decisive battle. Chapter 26. Starting the change. Garov, King Avauda's servant, returned to the castle and joined the other servants in their private room after his failed attempt to speak to the Council of the Wise, and consequently was rebuked and ordered to return to his place of work upon instructions from General Zingi. He couldn't talk or even respond to anything happening around him, as he was in agony and in distress, waiting for a salvation for his caged princess inside those miserable dungeons. He has to undergo this torment of waiting on the account that he can't do anything on his own, but only with forbearance, he advised himself, yet patience is a very bitter and enduring virtue that not everyone is able to accept. Garov was deeply immersed and totally absorbed with his thoughts when one of the servants came into the service room and told everyone there to be ready. They got ready at once, but they questioned the reason behind the order, and he answered, "The final war has commenced. That is what I heard from one of the soldiers who accompanied General Zingi, who is visiting the king now." "You mean we need to make party food and prepare for festive meals?" the chef asked him, and while Garov was listening to this news, he thought to himself that the princess had to wait even longer until the war came to an end, and by then everything could be useless for her fate. But the response that came out of the informer changed his disposition slightly. "No, no fest or parties. They told me to be ready for any emergency, for the reason that the enemies have attacked our soldiers and crushed part of our enforcements there. The king is very angry and furious. He ordered all the special troops to be deployed and to assist the army in their fierce battle. We have to attend the main hall and wait for any instructions," said the servant. The small gathering of servants conjured their bravery and composure and went towards the hall as they were waiting for any unusual assignment. Time was critical, as Garov learned from the informer who stopped him from joining the other servants and told him the passcode and then the sign that was agreed upon with General Zingi. That made Garov happier but more anxious. Time has arrived, and the princess' fate will be decided shortly. Hopefully, for a better outcome, he knew that he needed to carry a weapon, and he had to open the castle's inner gates for the conspirators to storm within, guide them towards the king's private chamber, and likewise lead the rest to the dungeons. He accepted this hazardous mission with much joy as he would see his beloved Princess Kara emancipated and set free out of her imprisonment. But is it a good sign to coincide the war with the conspiracy? Never better on his mind, as both are aiming for the good of the whole nation. That would be the best ever outcome he would have hoped for. Garov asked for a few minutes of a break, and just to tell the princess the good news, he went down into the labyrinth passage underneath the castle in haste, and then Garov knocked on the cell door and whispered, "Be ready, my princess. We will set you free very soon. I can't express my jubilation right now, but nevertheless, I will enjoy watching you depart this place and assume your rightful place as the greatest queen." Hearing no response from inside the cell, he left in a hurry to help carry out the agreed plan and play his part in the prepared conspiracy to deprive King Avauda from the crown. Chapter 27. March of the Underdog. On the other side, somewhere hidden in the Bugash forest, Princess Lion and the leader of the mutineer, Janez, left the place where they had taken shelter for a rest and resumed their mission to reach the castle. They cut through the forest and came to a hummock lying at the edge of the forest borders. They stopped as they were getting very close to their destination. Janez pointed to the castle not far from where they were stationed. They crouched down and hid among the bushes and began to inspect the road. They noticed the military convoys leaving the castle and heading towards the road leading to the besieged city. Janez turned to the princess and asked, "Are your people fighting the Galatians now? I can see the columns and plumes of thick smoke rising, but not from your city. It is rising and spiraling from the Galatian barracks around your city." Princess Lion answered, "That was the plan. We decided, me and Master Barkle. If Ravdan doesn't show up as agreed, then the Malinese troops will launch an attack against the Galatians' army to break the siege and distract their troops from the castle to allow me and my soldiers to invade the castle. And with you here with us, our chances are even better. I think the plan so far is working to our advantage as their troops are leaving the castle, and it would make it easier for us to sneak in and approach it. Then Janice commented, "It was very courageous of your people and very wise of your master. Things look a bit easier now, but remember one thing. Avauda is a master too. We must finish what we've started. As you can see, we can't cross the bone bridge between the land and the fortress, all of us at once, for it's too weak to hold the weight of our troops. In addition, there are many soldiers guarding the gates to the castle. I'd prefer to climb up from the lakeside on our way to the castle to avoid the guards and surprise them later in their trenches. How can all of us climb up there without being noticed? We are around hundreds of soldiers. It may take us a long time to lunge into there, and there seem to be too many of them around the gates. We have brought with us enough ropes and hooks, Princess Lion, and we are ready for everything. We will hang to the cliffs and move until we reach the bridge. That is the shortest distance, and we will launch our slings towards the rock and then cross towards the castle." They slithered slowly and cautiously alongside the arid hummocks, hiding from the enemy eyes, and lurched around them to avoid being ambushed and confronted by any unexpected enemy movement on the main road to that castle. Then they briskly crossed into the green meadows, traversed, and sloped towards the lake itself. They made it to the steep cliffs bordering and overlooking the lava lake. The scenery was prodigious and stunning, scary and bewildering, dazed and startled, every eye panning around and scaring the sight warily. The castle itself stood lofty and monumentally upon the great mighty arisen rock, soaring and towering from the lake, not very far from the land, that the very distance that separated them was abridged with the White Bones Bridge, settling both arms of the structure on both land sides, reminisce of the old drawbridge. Then they rapidly lowered their bodies on the cliff side after attaching the ropes to a rock and hanging to one of the many cusps bulging away from the stony wall like hands, stacked out and piled up from the cliff elevation. The attacking troops moved arduously in close distance towards the bridge, hanging on the wooden beams with their hands and legs from underneath that bridge. Then, they launched harpooned arrows with ropes attached towards an arrow slit into the flanking tower of the castle, and started crossing inside into the main bailey. One after another, they gathered inside the castle. It was suspiciously empty and looked abandoned. Then, they entered a room, and from there, they scoured the place around them to see where it could lead them. Nevertheless, they suddenly start hearing loud noises coming from outside the castle, and it is getting even louder by the time. They thought they were ultimately uncovered and exposed by the castle guards. However, to their surprise, the fighting was outside the bridge on the vast land. They sneaked out to grasp what was happening, and Princess Lion shouted in astonishment and amazement. "That is Prince Kadorf and his troops actively attacking the castle's guards. How did they get in here?" "Never mind how. It's our chance while they are busy fighting outside. We can proceed faster inside. Let's go now. We have no time to waste." Janice rushed into the open gallery lays next to the empty room, and the rest of the soldiers followed behind her, seeking a path to the great royal chamber. The long gallery ends in high stairs that lead to a closed and locked door from the outside. They tried to breach that heavy wooden door, yet they couldn't, and although they can still hear roaring shouts coming from behind that barrier. "We must break through this door, or we will all be trapped in here and miss our chance," Princess Lion said to them, and she ordered Javert to break it. He put his hands under the small opening of the door and left it up to release it from the attached steel hinges. With the help of the others, they removed the whole door and went out brandishing their own weapons and swords to find out what was happening in the big royal corridor. It was full of Galatian soldiers fighting each other in a weird and dramatic setting that seemed bizarre and shocking to witness. Yet Janice shouted, "There is a revolt happening here before our eyes. These are both Galatian soldiers fighting each other's. It seems our mission would be a lot easier, but can you observe the king himself?" In the middle of the great confusion, Princess Lion responded to Janice and said to her, "Yes, I would recognize him. However, he is not among any of these fighting soldiers. He must have been hiding somewhere else. Our position now seems very awkward and unhelpful. We are in the middle of a big fight and we have to split now. Janice, You and your troops can help Prince Kadorf and his soldiers fighting the Galatians' troops at the gates, attack them from behind, and attempt to let our troops inside the castle while we will help the other mutineers from the Galatians and search for our prime target. You are only a few soldiers. How can you fight your way among all these troops killing each other in this bloody hall? Asked Janus. My soldiers are more than enough. They are fearless, unrivaled soldiers, and they don't know what death is. They had the power bestowed upon them by none other than Mardak himself. Their only purpose is the king's head. Before they moved into the fighting crowds, Princess Lion saw General Zingy among the soldiers leading them to advance through the castle, and she shouted at him. General Zingy, which side are you on? Are you defending the doomed king? Princess Lion, are you welcome to join in? Is Prince Kadorf helping you? He is still outside fighting the special guards at the gates. How did you come in here inside the castle? It was a trick, but everything went wrong when they discovered our real purpose. We had a deal with Prince Kadorf to let his troops help us find the king and destroy him and his other associates, and we knew you were hiding somewhere around this place, but we didn't expect you to be here so soon. You must have been helped by the mutineers. You are few, and my soldiers will help yours to end the fighting here, and we can proceed afterwards to the other parts of the castle. It was a mass bloody fight. Many of the soldiers perished in the battle, and their bodies were scattered everywhere in the main bay. The battle started to weigh heavily in favor of General Zingy as the attackers overwhelmed the defending soldiers and outnumbered them. It was a very surprising foray into the king's castle, and none of the defending troops envisaged or anticipated the weird alliance between some Galatian soldiers and the Malinese troops. Nonetheless, against all odds, it had happened, and the king's soldiers were pushed forcibly inside the grandiose royal chamber, continuously suffering from huge losses. Though they had never given up or their fighting spirits waned from the fierce battle and to defend their king place, they were still, by now, encircled from every corner, and their final fate became even grimmer. General Zingy used that last opportunity and ordered them to surrender, drop their weapons, and stop the unequal resistance at once. Some did, but many others, among them Marketh, stood firm. Despite the anticipated bleak outcome, and despite there being no sight or any trace of the king himself at the chamber or elsewhere around. General Zingy called on the resistance. Save your own blood, Marketh and the other supporting soldiers. We are here for King Avauda only, not you. You are following our king's orders, and we will forgive you once you drop the weapons. Marketh answered him, We are one with the king. You infidel, disdainful cockroach, do you think we will believe a deceiver? Stand as a man against me if you dare. It was a hopeless challenge for the surrounded soldiers, and the general tried to advance by himself, but Princess Lion stopped him, saying, Let my soldiers finish them off. It is our time now. And she ordered her soldiers, Javert, I want only Marketh alive. Her 9 soldiers did not hesitate for a shred of moment, and they immediately engaged in fighting the many remaining defending soldiers, and, without hesitation, they began breaking their bones and slashing their throats mercilessly. Javert's fighters were unstoppable and uncompromising, and with each one of them taking on 3 or 4 of the enemies, they had great powers that amazed everyone who was watching the massacre that was happening before their eyes. To his disbelief and astonishment, Prince Kadorf, after defeating the gate's guards, stood beside Princess Lion and asked her curiously, Who are those fighters, and from where did you get them? They are Mardak soldiers, the chosen ones from Blue Plusiv. They are the true force of Blue Plusiv Almighty. He listened to my prayers and bestowed on these soldiers the powers to help us achieve a better destiny. The fight did not take long, as everyone on the other side was eliminated brutally and destroyed savagely, except for Marketh, the Avauda personal guard, who was brought injured, moaning from pain, and was dropped under her feet. The princess yelled at him, Where is Avauda? Where is he hiding from our judgment? Tell me now where he is lurking behind. Marketh answered the princess, You are pathetic in thinking you will ever win or even survive. I really enjoyed massacring your people, and especially your family. They were weeping really hard before I cut their throats and paraded their heads in front of the cheering audience. And now my beloved king is concluding to slaughter the rest of your people, and he will clean the planet from any remaining maladies, including you. Princess Lion was not affected by Marketha's words and replied, "You are very wrong to believe I will ever save you from that agonizing pain and the horrible fate waiting for you and destroy you right now. No, you are so pitiful and deplorable. I will make you suffer until death itself becomes a very precious dream of yours, which you wish you could ever get." Javert ordered Princess Lion, "Bind him, cut his tongue, gouge his eyes out, tie him to that pillar, and let us search for the remaining cowards in this doomed castle." Princess Lion assumed leadership among the allied parties immediately after that bloody and vicious show of power among the rattled audience of all the joint conspirators. She walked directly to the vacant throne inside the royal chamber and stood there, searching around for any hidden exits and, at the same time, contemplating the suffering her people endured because of this throne's previous occupier. While she was immersed in her own thoughts, Prince Kadorf approached her cautiously and asked her, "It is a perfect place and statue for you, princess, if you want to claim it right now." She turned to him and responded, "We will burn this whole place to ashes to remind any future tyrant who wants to be of the same fate that is waiting. We will not be tempted to follow the doomed Red Minus role model. There is yet more to do. We need to find your old ally, King Avauda. I never had an alliance with such a monster. It is very strange of you, princess, to convey me as an ally to Avauda. Even more strange is the fate of Ravdan, the faithful dissident and a true warrior. Don't you think so, Prince Kadorf? I have never trusted him. However, I won't let anyone come close to you. And more than your Ravdan case, we have long ago negotiated with General Zingi, and he was more understanding, and eventually we didn't need Ravdan, but General Zingi himself, the leader of the Galatians army, worked with us, and that is the result, as you are witnessing by yourself. I needed to divert Avauda's attention from the general, and I've passed the information to implicate Ravdan in the conspiracy. Avauda is a very suspicious person, and we needed the general more than we needed your friend Ravdan to achieve what we have right now. We need to find them all, the king, his imprisoned daughter, and Ravdan as well, or any other prisoners of the soldiers." They went on scouring all the rooms inside the castle, searching for the remnants of the king's defending troops to declare the final victory, but without capturing King Avauda himself, their position would still be at stake, and it could be turned upside down in the near future. Garov had led the soldiers towards the dungeons. There were few guards left to protect the place, and it took a short period of time for them to surrender to the overwhelming advancing power of soldiers under General Zingi leadership, who was in charge of securing Princess Kara's release and setting her free. They opened the prison cells, and they found her lying on a tiny wooden bed. She was frail, distorted, and confused when she saw everyone bursting inside the cell, and she thought that would be her last gasp of life on that planet, and she would be losing her life at Marketha's hands. Nonetheless, she was immediately taken by the arms of General Zingi, who comforted her and took her away from that horrible place. Together with Garov, they went to search for the rest of the cells in the dungeons. Then, Garov took them to Ravdan's cell and tried to force the door. It was heavy, and they kept on pushing until there was a gap. Garov entered the cell and found Ravdan dead. He was hanged to the door bars with his own military clothes. He died without spilling any of his blood. It was an end to a brave soldier who refused to die in painful and humiliating captivity. They searched around in the other cells, but they could not find anyone else in there. Princess Kara was by that time relieved to be released from her predicament, but at the same time, she was very sad to learn about her man's final sorrowful fate. The soldiers came back with the news that they had found only the princess in the prison, and they found Ravdan's body in his cell, but they could not find the king himself anywhere else in the castle. It was a big disappointment not to find him, and learning about Ravdan's unexplained death, Princess Lion was furious and full of anxiety. She ordered to burn the place totally and bring it to the ground. Set the fire everywhere. Let the hidden rats be burned or sink in the raging lava. We have nothing here but painful memories and a bloody empty throne. Let us do the right thing and bury the evil den and his sanctuary forever. Stop, shouted General Zingy. Don't burn anything for now. Why, General? Do you want this place as your future headquarters? I asked him, Princess Lion. We may need this place later to defend ourselves. I don't think we will ever need this castle. He never argued with her anymore, and they gave the orders to burn the place. As they were leaving the castle, the soldiers ravished everywhere inside mercilessly and set alight in all precious collections that were placed and kept to glorify the escaped king. And they left after the castle was engulfed in huge fire and was burning in great conflagration. The fire spread rapidly in and out of every corner, and the whole building was ablaze with ferocious flames inside it. The dark smoke towered high in the skies, and the walls started to crumble and cave in just as they were watching the joyful event from the land. The charred towers collapsed and vanished into the lava lake, just as the fate of the other parts of the doomed castle, and what remains was just a burnt blackened rock floating inside the lake. The Bones Bridge was demolished, and the bones were dropped and scattered into the lake for their final rest. It was an epic end and a reminder to the bloody tyrant that his den has gone for good. At least that was what Princess Lion was thinking at the time. Chapter 28. The Final Curtains. The gathered leaders stood in the shadows of the rising smoke from the burned Ivauda castle, wondering what would be their next step after they failed to find the king himself inside the castle. Their plan had been botched, and their conspiracy had been uncovered. Prince Lion was the first to speak. General Zingy, you may head towards the Randon city and search for Ivauda in there. Subsequently, you could announce yourself as the new king, in case he is dead and totally burned and charred in the castle. Otherwise, we must search for him in every corner. He might have been slipped away from us, and he is seeking allies to consolidate an army to fight back. Nevertheless, we must forbid him from achieving any escape if he is still alive. Princess Kara, you may hide among the mutineers until everything is clear and safe for you. We don't know the reaction of your people. However, we must liberate our people inside the besieged city to help us search for him. We can sign a truce with General Zingy. She could not finish expressing her spontaneous and improvised instantaneous plan when a hurried messenger from the Galatians' army came forth and called upon General Zingy, his leader. Sir, King Ivauda has entered the besieged city and went on a mass killing spree everywhere inside there. The soldiers impelled all the Malinese leaders, including Barkle and all of others, to the temple. Almost no one inside the city had survived the bloody massacre incurred upon the people, and the king, now among his victorious troops, is preparing to head back to this very place here, sir. It was a big shock that saddened everyone. They stood there in a tattered and defeated mood as they started contemplating the bitter end that was waiting for them. But then again, at least they realized that Marketh was truthful about his king's absence from the castle. In the midst of desperation, General Zingy claimed, "Why did you give the order to burn that horrible castle? We could have used it now to defend ourselves. At least now, we have nowhere else to go anymore." But his roaring reaction did nothing to deter the brave Princess Lion. "We have never needed to hide, General. We came here to fight and to die if that is necessary in honor. You may leave and rejoin your king's troops if you don't want to fight." Although it was late remarks from the princess, the small gathering started shivering upon hearing, "Glorious is the king," slogans roaring from far, and the nearing death can be easily seen depicted along the grim faces of the shaken conspirators as they were slowly encircled by King Avauda's troops from every visible corner. The Gelatin's troops organized their deployment around the conspirators' troops and raised the flags and banners along the knights and the advanced infantry. There is no way to run or take any refuge from the Galatians' troops, only jumping into the lava lake. There are not many choices left to pick from. Nonetheless, only to fight and die bravely. At the very least, they must have some pride left at the nearing end. That is the only virtue they can hold towards the last minute before departing for good. King Avauda emerged out of his vocal and ready troops, encompassed with his special soldiers, carrying their own flags and banners, and stood facing his fierce and most hated remaining enemies on this planet. He scared them in contempt and defiance, and then shouted to them in an arrogant and gnashing, gleaming face. You are the true imbecile failures. Your stupid conspiracy has totally collapsed, and all of your foolish efforts have gone in vain and scattered in the winds. How dared you lousy infidels to destroy my favorite castle? I promise I will build it again. Your remnant bones and crashed skulls would be the foundation of my new castle as a trophy that I will always cherish. You would never have a chance of any successes against me and my brave troops. Your prayer had never been listened to, and now you are surrounded and must be ready to die. You were desperate on surviving for a long time. However, the good news for you now that the waiting is over is that there is no place for you to hide or run away to. You have burned my favorite palace. That is all you managed to accomplish. The sorrowful part is that it hurts my heart to destroy all of you, including some of my faithful Galatians leaders and troops and my own daughter who stood beside the corrupted infidels. But then again, that is the price I have to pay for my last and most important victory. Remember, your demise is my immortality, and finally, what I want from you is to show some valor, bravery, and gallantry before you die miserably at this sacred and holy place of my own. Rounding up the enemies and preparing for the final attack, the battling troops stood facing each other. It was clear the enormous difference that existed between the numbers gathered of the king's military troops and of the surrounded opposition units. Nevertheless, despite that uncomfortable fact, Princess Lion dared to advance up front, accompanied by her own few guards, and responded to the king's challenge by showing they were ready to fight towards the bitter end. Ivauda, we are ready to fight. I dare for a duel if you're not a coward. Then come forward and face me, I promise you, one-on-one. Otherwise, send on your wicked troops, shouted bravely Princess Lion. The king, facing his last remaining enemies, answered her challenge with a gnashing smile and told her, You have survived my judgment many times before, Princess Lion. You were very lucky in the past. However, you are not worthy of a duel, for there is nothing that can keep you alive this time, I promise you. He pulled back after rejecting the offer and joined the front line, and then ordered his troops to attack. As he raised his hands, the Galatians' troops advanced in haste towards the resistance, but then suddenly, at that moment of decisive time, a heavy and dense mist descended upon the advanced Galatians' armies, veiled their vision, and obscured the light from around them so that they could not see anything around them anymore as the troops by then started to fight each other viciously in the midst of that confusion. Princess Lion turned to see Mardak standing next to her, and as he signaled to her troops to start attacking the confused and blurred-eyed Galatian troops. The resisting troops walked on through the mist with clear vision and determination, approached the blinded Galatian soldiers, and started slitting their way into the fighting parties on their way to find the king dugout. They slashed several throats and killed many blinded soldiers while they were searching diligently until they found King Avauda knelling on the ground, shouting in desperation at everyone around him. I am the king. I am the king. Be aware. Your enemy is in front of you. King Avauda was blinded, confused, and very scared as he lost his way. Princess Lion and her soldiers captured him, bound his hands tight, and dragged him away from his soldiers. They then placed him on a wooden post and hung him high. The mist vanished and dissipated. The soldiers stopped fighting as they realized they were killing each other. Princess Lion stood next to the impaled king and his deputy, Marketh, and beside her were Mardak, as well as the other remaining leaders from the resistance. She shouted into the Galatian soldiers, Here is your deposed king. Finally, you have lost the war against our brave troops, and now surrender and save your remaining lives. Here is your new leader. Princess Lion was pointing towards the general who stood next to her. General Zingy is your new king. Obey his command and pay respect to his authority, and you will survive. The general moved towards the defeated Galatian soldiers, who were overwhelmed by the heavy losses among them and the view of the defeated ex-king in front. Their mood changed, and the soldiers started shouting ardently in the open, bloody field. Glory's the new king. Glory's the new king. All of that happened at this weird time. It was a strange twist of fate and juxtaposition for the weary and exhausted Galatian soldiers, as there is nothing left to fight for anymore. They stood all together at that bitter end, behind their new old leader in solidarity, saluting the newly emerged ruler for their vast kingdom inside the isolated planet. Chapter 29. The New World. It was a new epic that emerged quickly and unexpectedly inside the realm of the confined Souls planet. The era started with the new reign of the triumphant King Zingi, who took over and claimed the Galatians' kingdom's ruling head, despite his subjects' reluctance to fully support him, as some of them were still weary of that huge leap into the unknown. For the Galatians, it was a long time spent under the rule of a vicious and merciless tyrant, but would the new ruler make any difference from his previous regime? After all, it has been generations since there was any kind of global cooperation between the various nations living inside that isolated world. Some of the history must have been forgotten and neglected in the hidden slice of memories amid the continuous wars and subsequent victories gained over the other inferior nations. But would their newly anointed king continue his predecessor's rule? Or would he overturn what has been achieved, adhere to the old antecedent, and start a new collaboration among the remaining nations? There was one thing sure. The next day, the new king started his reign by asserting his rule and own position and brought in his closest friends and faithful associates to surround his precious throne. Nonetheless, he fulfilled his initial promise to Princess Lion, and in addition to allowing her people to reclaim the territory they had lost before, he also sent her the few remaining captured prisoners as a sign of mutual trust between them. For the time being, it was a promising start for a new order inside Abyssington. Though Zingi might still need Princess Lion's services if at any given minute the previous monarch, Evauda, would resurface again after his mysterious disappearance, as by now Zingi was the new king, he could not believe the ease with which he assumed the kinghood and that the wicked would depart so soon and give up the fight so easily. It was a glamorous result for never-ending ambitions, and he would never rest if he did not see with his own eyes that the deposed Evauda was finally destroyed and totally rooted out of this confined world. Somewhere among the ragged Azimic mountains, ex-King Evauda of the Galatians was lying on a small green bush. He was in a state of defeat, injured, and humiliated, staring aimlessly in the wilderness surrounding him, hopelessly searching for any enemies preying upon him or for any vicious beast lurking near to devour what was left of his broken body. He started wondering to himself, "Marketh, where are you?" Evauda heard no response. Then he continued, "Is it the end? Where is my greatest kingdom, and where are my brave soldiers? I was on the verge of complete victory. I almost succeeded in annihilating most of the lousy infidels. Nevertheless, only a few of them remained waiting for my ultimate mercy." "That is what you were thinking, mere illusions, Evauda." A sudden voice of a person appeared from the lush behind the wounded king and interrupted the miserable thoughts at that time of the defeated Evauda. Evauda, who answered the speaker in a faint and shivering voice. "I am the king. Who are you?" Evauda asked the stranger, in fear and anxiety towards that ambiguous figure whose inception had stumbled mightily upon him. "It has been a while since we met for the first time. It might be somewhere around here, Prince Evauda. That was your position at the time, as I recall from the past." "Mardak," shouted Evauda. "You're a dreadful creature. You let me down, sir. You can see now in your own eyes what I ended up with, only a broken body, a depleted heart, and a lost kingdom." "Mardak, listen. It was a wicked plot to deprive me of the final victory that I was about to achieve. Immortality, that is the promise you gave me. Remember, Mardak, you have broken your own promise, and that cost me everything dear to me." Evauda stopped for a rest, then he continued lamenting his life. "Except for surviving, there is nothing worthy to achieve anymore. We will all spend our remaining lives here, abandoned and discarded in this isolated place, hopelessly in pain. Remorse is what you should feel for not letting me conclude our holy campaign. We are all doomed forever." Then Evauda started mumbling and gradually became more inaudible due to his weakness and body injuries. Mardak spoke to him gently. It was all about vanity, my weak, vulnerable friend. All of your dreams were futile and hopeless. Wake up now. You and your people are here for the reason that all of you deserve the ultimate punishment imposed on you. Your ancestors failed to appreciate what they had, and they were sent to suffer inside this desolated planet. Remember that the exiled people were dumped here and endured the everlasting epoch of never-ending pain. The true exodus won't happen until Blue Plusive himself permits it. However, there is always a way forward in this game. Never forget, Evauda, we are both entangled. Our fate is one but in the opposite direction. We came both from the same atom, from our own galaxy. We complete each other, although in an adversarial way. Your demise is my triumph, your pain is my pleasure. You were high on the top of the limelight, and I was abandoned, neglected, and hidden away from sight. Unfortunately, any measure of you is the nugatory of me. We are inseparable and entwined for good. We are the proxies of the ultimate powers, and we should always follow their orders. We cannot be neither independent nor even-handed, and we will never be able to have self-determination. Our fate is concluded, and we are all left to play your game. Now, you must stay alive and witness my triumphant time. You cannot die and vanish away. With my help, you were able to escape from the final fight, save your life, and tunnel yourself to this place. Evauda, you will stay here, in hiding and in disguise, until I decide what next for you. I will send you, Danas, to look after you, and you will survive for the time being. It was a hard test to your faith and to your determination, but remember, you can't have more ambitions than your master, Red Minus himself. You are still a vulnerable creature that relies on any help offered. However, until that time of independence, you will struggle to stand on your own 2 feet. Always ask for mercy, and remember that there is no sacred convent or holy promise. It is all wishful thinking that plays in the minds of similar ignorant creatures like you and me. The match is over. Behold my entwined fire. Chapter 30. The Eternal Powers Games. While the entwined powers were charting the immense space with maximum velocity and supreme tenacity, Blue Plusive rebuked his eternal companion, Red Minus. You have cheated, Red Minus. That was not part of our agreement on the game in Hellarena. I had intervened against my will in order to balance the outcome of the match. Red Minus replied, winning the game is not cheating. I won, and your creation, people, from Earthington will remain locked in Abyssington. There was absolutely no cheating in the game. Red Minus, you have given too much power to your deputy, Evauda, and he abused the game rules. You could have done the same with your deputy, Mardak, Blue Plusive. Nonetheless, you declined in the beginning and you were more reticent about the rules of the game. Indeed, you might want the game to be fair and balanced. However, in the end, there must be a winner. Unfortunately, in the previous game, there were no winners or losers, at least between us. Nevertheless, I have pride and dignity. Those values interfere with my judgment. At least on some occasions, I couldn't be a spiteful ultimate living power, if you understand me, Red Minus. I suggest that instead of spending our infinite time playing with our navels or wandering aimlessly into the vast space, we might have to organize more of such games. After all, you can always create and I delete, right, Blue Plusive? Red Minus, are you sincerely suggesting that I must ponder, design, and then create things that ultimately will be deleted, brushed away, or spirited out by you? Is that all, Red Minus? You have imagination, Blue Plusive, that is lacking elsewhere in the space, although, while I was watching and observing your creation from Earthington, I should say, Blue Plusive, most of your figures ought to not pass the design stage. There were so many flaws in them that initially I thought you're not serious at all in your final products, most likely for the reason you're a hobbyist with no previous experience. I must admit, Red Minus, that most of my creative work was done while I was gazing into the emptiness. I was throwing patches of variety of characters randomly on my prototypes, and more than likely, I missed the target by a good margin, and the end result was not to my liking, but I told myself not to bother. What worse can happen? We have many games ahead, Blue Plusive. Keep creating whatever your flawed templates are, and we will have many different players in our games on other planets. Perhaps by the infinite time you have and more rigorous trials, you shall become the accomplished creator. However, until then, Blue Plusive, let's game on. The space is our big arena. The end.